Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. And, as Rob reminded me on the break, what this Ken Ham debate proves is that we are fighting a winnable war. Ken Ham's so effective in that debate that you've got a liberal, and I don't know what I did with that piece. I want to pull it out of the stack. Yeah. Driving this liberal, Michael Schulzen, to drink in the middle of the debate. Ken Ham was so effective, he's tying Bill Nye up in knots. And according to this liberal, making Bill Nye look so bad that he started drinking in the middle of the debate. He said it was like watching the Broncos play the Seahawks. That's a liberal rating that. He says the debate is a format of impressions, not facts. Ken Ham sounded like a reasonable human being, loosely speaking, and that's what mattered. Nye, meanwhile, spent 3/4 of the debate sounding like a clueless geek. He went on strange asides and made awkward appeals to the obviously hostile audience. Spent 10 minutes delivering a dry lecture on geological sediments and biogeography. In one typical 2-minute span, Nye started out by explaining how evolutionary biologists make predictions. He then veered into the sexual habits of minnows, suddenly jumped to the number of bacteria in the human gut, discussed the amount of energy required for roses to produce fruit, told a story about how his first cousin, once removed, died from the flu, and then bounced back to the horny minnows with reference to certain fish diseases. And that's when he says it was about at this point that I began drinking. And, he pointed out the fact that Ken Ham would play little video clips of actual scientists, pedigreed scientists that have been published in peer-reviewed journals who are young Earth creationists. And here's what this liberal said. Ham's message was clear and accurate. You can be a creationist and invent economically useful stuff. One of the scientists he featured is the guy that invented the MRI machine. By contrast, he says, Nye seemed most alive when talking about all the things he couldn't explain. Where'd the Big Bang stuff come from? I don't know. Where does human consciousness come from? I don't know. How does life come from non-life? I don't know. So anyway, that was, so we are, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, fighting a winnable war. 888-589-8846 is the number to call. Let's grab a call. Let's go to David, Richmond, Virginia. David, welcome. What's on your mind?
Brian, thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
That was a wonderful interview that you just did with Ken Ham there. I had to laugh when the liberal said he started to drink when that was a wonderful.
That was something, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. I mean, I almost dropped my phone laughing. Okay, Brian, listen now. Fortunately, I have lost my doctor due to Obamacare, but it's kind of weird. Okay, by the grace of the Lord, I still have my insurance at work. The rates went up about $7.50 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time it's gone up in like 6 years, and they said because they had to add some stuff in their Affordable Health Care Act. Okay, and it's pretty good insurance. But I've lost my doctor. Now, get a load of this. The doctor that I go to, my family doctor, it's about 12 doctors in the office. About 6 or 7 of them went out on their own, and they charge $1,600 per year just to retain their services.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, you're supposed to get they share more time with you and spend longer with you. And they had like 3,000. He had like 3,000 customers, and he cut back to 600. Now, if you do that math, that's about 960,000. Now, I'm thinking that I have no way of knowing, but I can just read between the lines. I'm thinking maybe that's going to be these doctors that went out on this. That's going to be his salary because Obamacare is a train wreck. And this doctor, I waited 2-3 years to get him, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law have him and retained that service. And I just was not able to do that. So, in all honesty, it has caused me to lose my doctor.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're going to see a lot of that, David. It's called concierge care, where you have doctors, and I think you're going to see this increasingly, because there's nothing in Obamacare that has any kind of compulsion on doctors. That's the thing that Obama always fails to take into consideration, that you're dealing with human beings here who have brains and who have free will and will pursue alternatives if it's in their best interest to do it. So you're going to have a lot of doctors that are just going to go off the medical grid altogether. They don't want to have anything to do with Obamacare. They don't want to have anything to do with insurance. So they're going to go on a cash and carry basis. You're going to have a lot of doctors. This is not the first one I've read about, David, where doctors will basically have patients pay a flat fee for a year to retain their services, basically put them on a retainer like you would do with a lawyer. And then the doctor promises you can get a walk-in appointment. You can get a same-day appointment. If you have to go through the thicket, it may be several days before you can get in to see a doctor. And so for that one upfront price, you've got guaranteed access. You can call his office anytime that you need help, and he'll be there for you. They have a limited number of patients, so they can give you more attention. I think we're going to see a lot of this, and it'll be a cash business. They're just going to say the only clients I'm taking, the only patients we're going to see here in this office are those that are willing to pay cash for services, because we just do not want to get tangled up with Obamacare, do not want to get tangled up with insurance. Now, of course, there's no penalty for the doctors in doing that. The penalty is going to be for people who will go to them and then still are going to be stuck with some kind of a penalty, of Obamacare penalty, for not having insurance that they can show to the IRS. So all that's coming. And I appreciate the call, David. Thank you for that. And, I had that story. I didn't get into it in detail, but this is a piece in the LA Times about patients now in LA that are running into frustrating roadblocks at the doctor's office. LA Times, a month into the most sweeping changes to healthcare in half a century, people are having trouble finding doctors at all, getting faulty information on which ones are covered, and receiving little help from insurers who are swamped by new business. The extent of the problems is taking by surprise many patients and even doctors as frustrations mount. And they have a couple of specific examples. Here's one. Danielle Nelson said Anthem Blue Cross promised her a half a dozen times, she's dealing with cancer. They promised her that her oncologist would be covered under the new policy. She's got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosed last year, suspicious lump near her jaw in early January. She was told by Anthem Blue Cross, your oncologist is covered. She went to her oncologist office, big fat sign, big bright orange sign, right there on the front door, covered California plans are not accepted. So she cannot see her oncologist. And she says, look, I can't sleep at night. And Obama's doing this. She says, I can't believe this is how Obama wanted it to happen, but this is Obama's doing. You got a lot of insurers. They are sharply cutting the number of doctors and hospitals in their network in order to cut costs. So patients are finding out they can't see the doctor they wanted to see. They can't go to the hospital that they want to go to, and it's because of Barack Obama. So that's all going on with the healthcare rollout. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Monty in Northwest Virginia. Monty, welcome. What's on your mind?
Brian, real quick question, because I know you run out of time. I believe, and I haven't been around the federal or state education for a while, but I believe, Brian, that probably every state admits or subsides to the the evolutionism or Darwinism as opposed to creationism. I wonder how many states give them enough with creation and evolution. Do you have an idea to that, Brian?
Now, what's again the nature of the question? How many states give some place for the teaching of creation science?
Meaning that I would believe that every state, if you take education to science in each state department, they give a place to Darwinism, the theory.
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah.
But how many states also have an allowance for creationism? Because, Brian, I think we could do a push in each state, just like AFR does, and come up with people just like Ken Ham that would insist that we have the opportunity to teach something that has more weight.
Yeah, well, I know that Louisiana had that for a while, and again, it was thrown out by the Supreme Court. And this gets back, this is a different topic, but it gets back to what I've been suggesting as the path forward is governors that will simply defy the Supreme Court. Now, Bobby Jindal, he believes in creation science. He's supported bills that would protect the teaching of creation science or intelligent design. There's a couple of different approaches out there that are consistent with at least parts of the scriptural account. And I think it's time for a governor to just defy the Supreme Court. You've made your ruling, now you enforce it. We're going to go right ahead. We want our students to have a well-rounded education. We want them to know about evolution, but we also want them to know about creation science. Does the Bible's account of origins, does it make sense? We want well-rounded, well-educated students. That's obviously a defensible point of view. 46% of the American people believe it, according to Gallup 2012. Despite 100 years of brainwashing, 46% of the American people still believe that God created man in his present form less than 10,000 years ago. They can't make it go away. So it's worth exploring in a classroom. Is this point of view that's held by almost half of the American people? There's only 15% of the American people believe that everything happened with no direction or guidance from God. 15%. So it's worth asking the question, is what half of the American people believe, is it valid? Can it be supported? Can it be defended? Now, Texas has it in their standards. Texas does allow for the teaching of creation science. Louisiana did for a time. So I'm hoping, Monty, maybe one of the things that'll come out of this will be more states will actually provide a well-rounded education and study all sides of this issue. Thanks, Monty. I appreciate the call very, very much. Well, that's it for today. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, as Ken Ham proves, we're fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.